Thank you for this afternoon. Okay, we have today with us Javier Mejías. Javier is a good friend of mine, or we can say we are now starting to be friends, right?
Yeah.
We can say that. Yeah. Javier started a company called Startup Explorer. That you're going to be most familiar with this also after today. So it's a little bit like F6S and Angel List, something like that, right? He raised also money, and that is pretty recently. Can I talk about it, or
yeah, of course, it's public. You can talk anything you want.
Yeah. So he was invested by Caviedes. Caviedes is probably one of the most famous venture capitals that we have in Spain. So it's the one that is backing also BlaBlaCar. So here you have a guy that is being convincing someone to invest in this company, and probably the most difficult one to get invested. So today he's going to be talking mostly about KPIs and metrics and things you should be doing into your startup. And then later on also, they would like to do a one-on-one on each of you. So it will be quick, 10 minutes, and interact a little bit with you. Okay, will it be okay? So it will be like 45 minutes or a little bit shorter than that?
I will try.
Okay, thanks, Javier. So the audience is yours now. So you can share. Yeah.
So I'm going to try to share the screen.
Okay, if you think the echo is too much, let me know. So we will mute the mic.
Of course, I will. Okay, so are you seeing my screen right now?
Perfect.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to try to talk a bit about metrics, mostly about ego, because most of us, when we deal with metrics, most of the time we are trying to share ideas or KPIs that are most related to our ego and not to our business. I'm going to try to keep the talk short and mostly basic. Probably most of you know or have some insights already about that. So,
Javier, is it possible to get the presentation at the end?
Of course, I will share with you. Don't worry about that.
Thank you.
So, as Rafa told you, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Startup Explorer, which is probably the most similar business model in the world is AngelList. We have both a quite big database of startups and investors here in Spain, but also, to our surprise, in 95 countries right now, and it's growing quite rapidly, I would say. And it's also an investment platform. Right now, mostly focused just in Spain, and we are using a business model quite similar to the one in AngelList. We have lead investors, which is a quite important thing if you're looking to raise money, and most of them, we are quite lucky, as Rafa told you, because in our cap table, we have probably some of the best angel investors and VCs here in Spain. And what we do is we try to connect time-savvy investors or just investors that don't know how to invest with top investors that are willing to share their investment opportunities. But Today, I would like to talk about growth, and to talk about growth, you have to first talk about metrics. So for me, the main problem is that most of us are focused on any of these three stages: how to acquire traffic, how to manage the users, and how to get more bugs. But the thing is that the magic is not there. The magic is how to change the state from a user from one of the states to the other. For example, how do you entice users to register in your platform? How do you entice users to pay for your product or your service and those kind of things? And for this, probably you know, how many of you are familiar with this funnel? Will you raise your hands? Okay, cool. Well, probably you know that these metrics are called the parent metrics, and are called that way because of the first letter of each word. So you are saying things like PART, R, which is the acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. This funnel, it's pretty basic, but also something that most people doesn't give enough value. And I think it's pretty important to try to first create your funnel for your product, and then try to understand how to enhance that funnel. For example, the first step is acquisition. It's how do you get traffic, and how do you try to interest that traffic in your product. And most of us just focus on the traffic acquisition, which is nice and it's quite important. But I believe that traffic is just not enough. We should focus on getting, I would say, engaged traffic. And that means that if you're saying, let's say I have 1,000 visits a day, probably you're not taking into account your bounce rate. Probably you're just thinking about how many people lands in your homepage. But probably the traffic you want to understand or to leverage is the traffic that gets some time there, spends some time on your homepage, looks for, let's say, the pricing page, whatever. After that, and I would say it's the most difficult part of any startup, is to get a good activation. And that means different things on different business models. For example, it's quite easy to understand that activation on a software as a service business model means that the user registers on the platform. But for an e-commerce site, for example, it's a bit more difficult, because you have to qualify here traffic that or users that come and are willing to get a deeper relationship with your model. And that means, for example, like browsing through products or spending more than let's say 1 minute or whatever. You have to think deeply about what's activation for you. After that, and there's a different step, and that step depends on your business model. And most traditional business model, after that, here comes the revenue. So you monetize the customer. And let's say, for example, you're creating a restaurant. The acquisition could be how many people passes by the door of your restaurants, how many of them are, let's say, stop to see the menu. Activation could be how many of them really enter the restaurant. And after that, of course, would be the revenue, how many of them eat at your restaurant. With this idea, most of us would say, okay, so retention is how many times they come back. Retention probably is the most misunderstood step on your metrics, and probably the most important one, because most of us try to get higher margins on the products, but we are not really thinking about how to get more recurrence, which is the key of each business, of any business model. Sorry?
It's all right.
No, sorry. I heard my own voice and I thought that was one of you asking a question. So as I was saying, retention in many business model comes after revenue, but not in all of them. Particularly in the software as a service business models, for example, usually users first sign up and they use the product, and once they are willing to pay for it, they transition to the next step, which is the revenue or monetization. And after that comes a referral, which means when a user is willing not only to pay for your product, but also willing to share with their friends, or is willing to say how lovely was the experience with your product. As you can see, this funnel, what really does is tries to picture how a user comes from the step of not knowing anything from you to paying for you, and also referring you to your friends. which is probably the most important steps in any business model, because this is really the engine of your business model. If you know how to tweak this engine, you can get a growth engine really interesting. But probably the first doubt here is, okay, how do I get traffic? We have like 3 ways of getting traffic, and it really relies on what kind of business model you do have. First one could be the outbound, which is probably the most common. It's you go for your users and you pay for them. I love the photos. Probably this is one of the sessions I receive more photos. The pity is that it's not for me; it's for my slides. But you can count on the slides. I'm going to send you all of the slides, so don't worry about that. As I was saying, the outbound channels are those that you're paying to get customers. These channels are like drug, because you pay and you quickly have customers. And like drug, they are addictive. So my advice would be, and of course that depends on the business model you do have, to think deeply about how to balance this kind of channels with the other ones we are going to talk about. Outbound channels mean advertising, PR, affiliate programs, sales, email marketing, events. It's when you pay for a customer, and after that, slowly he will come. The inbound channels, on the contrary, are much more difficult to work at first, because they need a lot of effort, and you have to really be committed to them. But they are long-term channels, and those are if you're really thinking about the scalable business model, probably you should be thinking about how to, in the long run, how to get traffic. So that means being relevant to search engines like Google, creating content strategies. That's one of the parts that for Startup Explorer is working like charm. Like we have created like the biggest database in Spain, and one of the biggest in Europe, about startups, investors, and so on. And that means that we get a lot of coverage, not just on search engines, but also on press, because we create for them content, but also we are creating, like, I would say, advanced content, which means, for example, infographics and videos and these kind of things. And it works slowly, but it definitely works. And the last one, which is probably the least used one, is how do you get traffic by using product features. And that's not only talking about referring new users, but how do you get users to, how do you say, to invite new users without even noticing it. I'm going to talk a bit about later. But my main advice here would be just to focus on the next order of magnitude. And that means that most of us are really concerned because investors say that they want a scalable business model, they want big markets, and so. And the problem of that is that we are always really concerned about how do you get 1 million of users. But the thing is that if you think too much about that, probably you're going to try to focus on the wrong channels on the wrong time. At first, you have to do, you know, the saying of Paul Graham, do things that don't scale. You have to do things that really don't scale. You have to focus on your friends and your network, because one of the main lessons for me with all the startups I've worked through my life, that you have to focus on different channels on different times. So at first, you have to do things that don't scale, and probably most people say that the first 1,000 users shouldn't be acquired in a scalable way. After that, probably is the moment you have to push on highest growth channels, but not at that time. So for me, the lesson here would be just focus on the next order of magnitude. How do you get the next 100 users? After that, how do you get the next 1,000 users, and so on, which is it's quite important. So I was saying that one of the things quite important it's the traffic acquisition, but this is not about how do you get more traffic, but how do you get more high quality traffic. Because I've seen many times people using, like, let's say, Facebook to acquire lots of users, but most of the business model don't rely on getting lots of users. Most of the business model rely on getting lots of paying users, and that means that you have to take into account the whole life cycle of the user, because probably using Facebook, let's say you're getting 1,000 users a day, but how many of them are really paying for you? So for me, the idea to decide what's the best channel to focus at first would be, of course, how much volume can get to you, but also the segmentation. Because I've seen many times that, for example, you are tackling a blog focus on, let's say, wannabe mothers that has 1,000 visits a day, and also you have a Facebook group with can give you like 10,000 visits a day. But the thing is that probably the blog ones are really much more willing to pay once they become users. I've seen that many times. So segmentation for me is key. Also, it's really important that the time it costs for users to go through the funnel. Because, for example, if you use a sales channel, you're going to spend in many B2B businesses like 6 months to close a deal. So probably that makes sense on the later, but at first probably you don't have the money to wait that much time. Conversion, of course. Attribution it's really important, because most of the time you want to focus your marketing budget on the things that really work. But there are some channels that are difficult to discover if they are really working or not. And that happens because many of the times users use different devices, different browsers. They start the buying session, let's say, on the work computer. After that, they see the product on their cell phones, and they finish the buying on their home phone. So it's quite important to be able to get the attribution, and that usually means using tagging for URLs. And of course, the cost of the channel it's very important. After that, for me comes the probably most important step, which is the activation, and that means how do you entice the users to sign in. And one of the probably most interesting strategies I've seen is the one that the guys from Mint, I don't know if you have met them. These guys create like a financial software in the US, and they discovered that it worked like charm for them to create a really basic landing pages for each question the user has. That's really nice, because you position really well on Google and on the other search giants, but you also have a really clear call to action, because most of us create too complex pages for our users. I'm really a freak about conversion, and there are way too much call to action in most of the pages. So a landing page is usually a good way to address that problem. Of course, A/B testing, probably most of you know what we are talking about. It's like trying to to offer a different version of your, let's say, landing page or product to a part of the users, and of really important, and to have like a control group, which is the one you're going to show the existing landing page, because that helps you to understand how conversion works. Let me show you this for just a single moment. You are seeing here the landing page of 37Signal, which for HighRise, which was their CRM product, and they created a really, for at least for me, a really ugly landing page, but the conversion was much higher. After that, they tried a different approach, and they got a 100% increase on sales. That means doubling your sales by changing your landing page, something I would say impressive. But you have to keep on trying, because they found here the 22% less the conversion, and also they were even fine-tuning the landing page. But in the end, A/B testing has some limitations for startups, because you have to get lots of traffic, and you have to really be able to decide what works most. For me, the advice here would be to focus on what really has big changes or big impact on the numbers. And as I was saying, it's really important to use onboarding. When you have complex products, probably you know Facebook, when they release a new feature, they create like an onboarding procedure that works very well. In fact, in Startup Explorer, we have I would say a quite difficult sign-up process, because we use something similar like LinkedIn. Users create a person profile, and after that they have to create a company profile. And we discovered that many users were leaving the page without doing that. So we forced an onboarding that in the end it was a bit, I would say, not very funny. But the users in the end, the conversion was much higher. And of course, you have to leverage and take it really seriously, email marketing. And email marketing is not using MailChimp newsletters, which most of us do. Email, that's in my experience, this kind of newsletters convert less and less every day. So for me, it's quite important to focus on two kinds of emails. The first one would be the transactional emails of the platform. That means that when a user does an action to really to trigger an event, that creates an email for them. For example, the user creates the profile of the company, but is not adding any investor. So we create a trigger email that helps them. Hey, guy, I've seen you have created the profile. It's really important to use these kind of tools. Probably you know Mixpanel and Intercom allow you to do these kind of things, and are really helpful. When we deal with retention, I think most of us just focus on how many times the users come back, and focus on these key KPIs, the daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users, and we use the PRU, which means powerfully active users, because we think it's not the same that someone comes back to your platform and uses the product for 10 minutes. That it's not the same that someone that it's really doing really important actions on your platform and spending more time, and for us it's quite important. But the question here it's not how many times they come back, but from less engaged to more engaged, what are the features of the product? Of course, revenue it's really important, but we do something that makes sense for you. We usually mistake and do something that makes sense for big businesses, but not for a startup. we usually focus on the ones that, for example, let's say they leave the shopping cart, or they leave the application, or they don't use the application. But probably we should, instead of focusing on the users that are churning, probably we should be focusing our business on the users that are really engaged to our platform. That's really important, because if you're not, you don't really have the time to focus. You don't have most of the time, at least, you don't have a really well finished product with everything figured on, and you're just trying to learn. So if you try to focus on the ones that are not liking the experience, probably you are going to hear lots of, I would like to have this feature, I would use the product if I had this feature, and so I think that's not the right focus right now. Probably the right focus now is I want to see the users that really love the product, even if the product is not really nice, even if the product is not working sometimes. I think that's where you should put the focus. And of course, you should focus on two of the main metrics of any business model, which are the acquisition cost. The acquisition cost is the gross margin. Is the cost of your spending to acquire users, new users. Let's say you spend 1,000 euros on marketing campaigns this month, and you acquire 100 users. So your acquisition cost per user would be 10 euros. And that is balanced with the other number, which is really tricky to figure, which is the customer lifetime value, or the lifetime value. And that means how gross margin is the user paying to you or giving to you, each user, along across the whole life cycle of the user. And that's really tricky, because if the user only pays one time and you get, let's say, 15 euros of the user, and it costs you 10 euros to acquire, cool, you're getting 5 euros per user. But if the user may come back again, you have to figure how many times they are willing to come back. I'm not going to deal with that because it's quite complex, but you have here to focus on cohorts and this kind of retention metrics. And of course, you have to think really carefully about referral. And referral, it's not about how a user invites other users. I think that's not the most important case. Probably you have to figure out what's the sweet spot of each users using your product. For example, I create a profile on your site. Let's say you're creating something similar to Shopify. I upload my products on the shop, and I made my first sale. After that, that's the sweet spot. I'm really happy. I'm willing to share that news. That's where I should try to suggest the user to share the experience, or because if most of us could have really nice viral loops, but many of the times we try to suggest the start of the viral loop at the wrong time. And of course, I think that's one of the worst errors most startups do when they are going to launch a product. It's to launch it too soon. I usually say that you have to launch 2 times a product. The first one is a really small scale launch without trying to reach the guys from TechCrunch, and which is something most of us try to do. Because when you really launch your product first, your funnel sucks. Probably you don't have a conversion funnel. You have a conversion plate. It's really really not working. So you have to get some traffic to optimize the funnel and focus at that time on activation and retention. and how do you get each user that comes to your site to really to sign up and to use the product more. And only once you have really enhance the conversion rates, it's when you have to deal with growth, not before. And probably you know that you have like three potential growth engines in every business model. Most, I would say 99% of them use paid growth engines. And that means that if you get a business model where it costs you less to acquire users than to monetize them, let's say in the previous example, you get 15 euros per user, and you pay 10 to acquire the user, you are getting 5 euros per user. So it's nice. Here you have to focus in this kind of growth engines. You have to focus on each of the sides of this equation, and probably makes more sense. Of course, you have to try to lower the acquisition cost. That is something most of us understand. But you also have to try to enhance the customer lifetime value, and that means that you have to focus on recurrence, and that means trying to do everything to get the user to come back again and again and again. On the other side, you have the viral growth engines, and my advice would be try not to focus on them, because I've been working in startups for 15 years, and I've seen only a really full-fledged viral growth engine working for 3 months. After that, it didn't work. A viral growth engine means that the user is giving you 1 or more users each month. That means that you probably are going to double your base, your user base, really quick. And that said, I must say that even though it's not the best growth engine to focus, of course, each user you acquire using viral methods, it's a free user, so it lowers your acquisition cost. So it's always nice to focus on the viral. And finally, the sticky growth engine, it's something that most people really doesn't get. A sticky growth engine is like the one that, for example, the guys from Dropbox have, because in this case, you are not really focused on getting more users, because most people, when thinking about Dropbox, they think that they do have a viral business model, a viral growth engine, and that's not the case, because they don't get money for getting more users. They get money when free users pay. So in this kind of business model, what you want to do is like to push the users along the funnel. You want to transform the user from acquired to, let's say, to paid. And that means using product features to enhance this kind of behavior. For example, in Dropbox, when you plug in your phone to a computer that has Dropbox, Dropbox tries to suggest to upload the photos. And that means pushing you along the funnel to really spend all the available space you have. Or when you share a Dropbox file, a big Dropbox file with a user, let's say 1 giga, that means 1 giga for you and 1 giga for the other part. So it's really important. So being very basic, I would say that for a startup, for me, growth is just 2 things: to get more users, but mainly better users to enhance the conversion and inside the funnel. And speed is something that most people are not really thinking about. So if you have a funnel that has let's say not a really big conversion rate, but that converts really fast, probably you can earn lots of money. And of course, as an entrepreneur myself, don't forget to register, okay, in the platform. And it's quite important because not because just it's important for me, but because most journalists here in Spain and most investors are using us to create these are the 10 most promising startups about biohealth or about drones or whatever. Okay. So that's what I was willing to share with you. Do you have any question, or we change to the one-on-one sections?
Questions? Yeah, they do have.
Cool.
Yes.
Let me answer the screen.
Maybe you could be clear.
About
Sorry.
the relationship between the lifetime customer and the customer session. What is the best relationship, or which one do you recommend?
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear the first part of the sentence.
Hello. Thank you. About the relationship between the lifetime customer or something and the customer acquisition cost. Which relationship you recommend?
The ratio. Yeah. A one ratio, it's not a good ratio because the number here that you are in the customer lifetime value, you're only taking into account the gross margin. But there are some indirect costs, like let's say your salary as CEO or offices or whatever. So what's a good ratio? Usually, it really depends on the business model, because if you're selling, let's say, lower number of units with high profit, it's not the same that if you're saying lots of units with lower margin. But usually in the software as a service industry, for example, it's about 1.2, 1.5. Ranging from that to higher, it's really nice, but really depends on the business model. We are going to do regarding that. I'm involved in something that is called España Lean Startup, which is the state of the art of the Lean Startup community here in Spain. And this time we are going to try to do something really ambitious, which is I'm focusing my chapter this year on the key metrics of each business model, because the marketplace metrics are not the same like the software service metrics, like e-commerce. So we are going to try to really give this number you were asking about, because if you have a fashion e-commerce site, probably the conversion rate is not the same like a health or beauty e-commerce site. We are going to create some kind of surveys, which I will then direct to Rafa and Charo. So you fill in them, probably you are going to get access to these numbers.
Okay, well, thank you.
Really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Alberto.
Hi, Javier.
Hi.
When you mentioned the A/B testing,
Yeah.
so what would be like a good numbers of users or a good numbers of data considered significant?
Yeah, that's a nice question. The thing, the problem usually when we are starting out is that we don't have that many traffic. So in fact, I would recommend you to look for, there are in the internet some A/B testing calculators that tell you how much traffic you have to get to have a really significant result. But most of the times, the big changes in A/B testing really doesn't need that many traffic. In a really good A/B test, you're going to, with, let's say, 100 users a day for a week, probably you're going to get enough data to make a decision.
Okay, so you would suggest between like 500 and 1,000.
Yeah, probably something like that.